the alien queen believed she wed an ordinary human, until his true power surfaced. The great hall of the Zyrevel Palace was larger than most entire cities on human worlds. Towers of shimmering crystal reflected the light of 3 suns, and the walls were lined with alien banners, each depicting victories and conquests spanning centuries. Queen Zyrevel, the ruler of the dominion of Krellies, walked with the elegance and authority of her species. Her presence alone commanded silence. The court, a mix of diplomats, generals, and noble families, bowed as she passed. Every eye in the room reflected both admiration and fear. Yet today, even Queen Zyrevel felt a strange sense of tension she could not dismiss. Across the room, her new husband waited. Elia's ward, the human she had married to cement the fragile peace between their species, looked nothing like she had imagined a partner in such an alliance would. He was average in build, plain in attire, and had the soft features of a human rather than the angular, imposing look of most aliens in her court. His eyes, brown and steady, met hers without the slightest trace of fear. The queen's advisors whispered among themselves. "Surely he is weak," one muttered in a language Elias could not understand. "No enhancements, no psionic mark, nothing. What did she see in him?" Another voice scoffed. "Perhaps she truly does not care about strength." She had agreed to this marriage because the humans were growing rapidly, their influence spreading among unclaimed star systems. And yet, even knowing the political necessity, she could not shake the feeling that there was more to this human than she had guessed. The ceremony had been a display of extravagance. Beams of light crisscrossed the hall, and alien melodies filled the air. Guests from hundreds of worlds attended, all expecting to witness either a weak union or a cunning strategy by the queen. When Elias had taken her hand, he had bowed politely and murmured his vows in the galactic common tongue. There was no flourish, no impressive display of power, nothing to command respect in the traditional sense. And yet the queen had felt a spark of curiosity, a quiet, impossible-to-ignore presence. After the ceremony, the court dispersed for the customary feast. Alien delicacies floated on magnetic trays, shifting colors and shapes to please the senses. Zyrevel observed Elias as he moved among the guests. He smiled politely, nodded to dignitaries, and even tolerated subtle mockery from the alien nobles without anger or hesitation. Where others would have faltered, he remained calm, composed, and entirely human in demeanor. An incident occurred near the center of the hall. A group of young nobles, eager to show their wit, approached Elias and whispered insults under the guise of curiosity. "So human," one said, "do you even understand the weight of standing beside a queen? Or are you merely a pet to be paraded?" The words were calm, but the tone carried something subtle, a quiet confidence that made the young nobles recoil, unsure if they had provoked him or themselves. The queen's brow arched. There was more to him than the court suspected. Yet she reminded herself that humans were known for persistence, cleverness, and resilience, qualities that often went unnoticed until tested. Still, in the face of the entire dominion, Elia's ordinary appearance gave her court the impression of weakness. Later, the queen led Elias to her private chambers, a suite that overlooked the glowing city below. Towers of the palace reached into the sky, piercing the clouds as if to remind all who looked upon them of her power. "You are quiet," she said, finally breaking the silence. "Most would panic after meeting my court. They would be terrified of the expectations, of the mockery." And yet here was one who seemed to carry himself not as a weak mortal but as something different. Before she could question further, alarms rang through the palace. Alien guards rushed past the chambers, their armor clanking, voices urgent. "What is it?" Zyrevel demanded, moving to the balcony. "Unknown assailants are approaching," one of her generals replied. "Sensors cannot identify their species. They appear cloaked, using advanced stealth technology." Outside, dark shapes flickered across the surface, moving faster than ordinary ships could. They were small, agile, and clearly intended for infiltration. Her elite guard was ready, but the situation was chaotic. Weapons activated, energy shields flickered, yet the attackers moved with a precision that surprised even veteran commanders. Then Elias stepped forward. The Queen barely had time to react before he moved with a speed and precision that defied what she believed a human could do. He intercepted the first wave of attackers, disarming them with techniques that seemed almost instinctive. His movements were fluid, almost like a dance, each action neutralizing the threat without unnecessary force. The court gasped. Aliens trained for centuries in combat and strategy could not keep pace. Yet Elias moved calmly, purposefully, as if he had done this many times before. In moments, the threat was contained. The attackers lay unconscious, unharmed but unable to continue. Zyravel approached him, a mixture of shock and intrigue in her gaze. What is this?" she asked. Elias bowed slightly. "Basic human training," he said. "I promised I would protect you. I keep my word." Aliens whispered among themselves, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Some feared him, others were in awe. The Queen, however, felt a spark of understanding. Humans were unpredictable. They did not show all of their abilities at once. They revealed power only when necessary. After the incident, the Queen and Elias retreated to her chambers. She studied him carefully. "There is more to you than you admit," she said quietly. "I suppose," Elias replied, "but there is little reason to show everything at once. Strength is best revealed when it matters most." She had expected a symbolic human, someone who would be compliant and manageable. Instead, she had someone capable of far more than anyone understood. That night, as the three suns set beyond the horizon, casting the city in hues of gold and violet, the Queen pondered her decision. The galaxy was changing. Threats were growing. And humanity, so underestimated, so quietly resilient, might just change everything. Elias sat beside her, calm, composed, human yet extraordinary. He looked out at the city, not with awe but with awareness, as if calculating the countless possibilities that lay ahead. And in that moment the Queen realized something profound. The human she had married was not just her partner. He was a symbol of a species whose true power was hidden, waiting for the moment it was needed. The marriage, meant to secure peace, had unknowingly bound her to a force that could alter the balance of the galaxy. And the galaxy, as yet, had no idea what humans were capable of. The sun had barely risen over the city when the palace was already alive with activity. Alien guards patrolled the corridors, diplomats argued in hushed tones, and technicians checked the sensors that now scanned the skies constantly. Ever since the assassination attempt at the wedding feast, the dominion of Krellies had become tense, every movement shadowed by suspicion. Queen Zyravel walked with purpose through the palace halls, her long robes flowing behind her. She had returned from observing the city at dawn and saw no sign of the previous night's intruders, but she could not shake the sense that the attack was only the beginning. The humans were underestimated, she knew, but so were many other threats. Her mind raced, considering every possibility. Elias walked beside her. He moved with the same quiet confidence he had shown at the wedding feast. Observing him, the Queen could see the calm clarity in his gaze, a stark contrast to the nervous energy of the court. Even now, after witnessing his skill, she wondered how much of it was instinct and how much was hidden knowledge. "The court will never forgive you," whispered one of her advisors as she passed. "They think you brought weakness into the palace." "And yet," she replied softly, "that weakness just protected me when even my elite guards could not." The rival coalition, a league of alien species determined to see the Dominion fail, had begun movements near the outer sectors. Spies reported that they were preparing an invasion, believing the Queen's union with a human meant weakness. "They think we are vulnerable," said Zyravel, her voice firm. "They have misjudged." When the council turned to him, some with a sneer, he gave a polite nod. "Humans have ways of adapting," he said simply. "It is not always visible, but we are ready for what comes." By evening, the palace had become a hub of anticipation. Scouts reported strange fleets approaching, cloaked in ways that avoided most detection systems. Alien commanders scrambled their forces, unsure of the scale or intent of the incoming threat. The Queen, however, trusted Elia's calm assessment. He had observed patterns that no one else noticed. Suddenly, alarms blared. Energy shields flared, warning lights blinking across the walls. A fleet had arrived in orbit, moving with precise coordination that suggested intelligence far beyond standard military tactics. "Impossible," muttered one general. "Their movements should be visible. They should not be able to approach this close." "The sensors are not the only tool for observation," he said. "Sometimes prediction and understanding are just as important. Let me show you." He ran across the hall, his pace almost imperceptible to the human eye, yet faster than the aliens could track. He intercepted the first group of attackers before they could reach the palace gates. His movements were precise, disarming them without causing serious injury. Each step, each motion seemed to flow naturally, almost like water following its path. The alien generals gawked. "He is not enhanced," one said under his breath. "No cybernetics, no psionic energy. How?" "You are more than ordinary," she said softly. "I am human," Elias replied. "That is enough." Over the next few days, the Queen and Elias worked together to strengthen the palace defenses. Alien engineers, skeptical at first, began to follow Elias' advice. He suggested subtle changes, rerouting energy flows and adjusting the positioning of defense systems. Within hours, the palace was operating more efficiently, its shields stronger and faster to respond than they had been for decades. "What is remarkable," Elias explained to the Queen one evening, "is not the technology itself. It is the understanding of how systems interact. Humans excel at observing patterns. We may not be the strongest in isolation, but we adapt faster than almost any species." And Elias was a perfect example of that principle. During this time, the rival coalition made its next move. Ships appeared at the edges of the human-occupied sectors, moving with caution, aware now that the Dominion was not as weak as they had assumed. But they underestimated Elias. Using simple but effective strategies, he predicted the enemy's paths, adjusting defenses in real time. The Queen watched as her palace became a fortress not just of alien might, but of human ingenuity applied in ways they had never imagined. Even the most arrogant of alien commanders began to whisper among themselves. "That human," one said, "he is changing everything we know." He simply observed, calculated, and acted. To the Queen, this was both inspiring and unsettling. She had ruled for decades, witnessed countless wars and political schemes, yet humans were something she had never fully understood. One night she found him in the palace garden, standing beneath the twin moons. His gaze was distant yet focused, as if he were watching events unfold across light years. "You plan far ahead," she said. Elias looked at her, calm and steady. "I try to. The future is always uncertain, but preparation allows humans to survive and sometimes to protect others." They had patience, resilience, and the ability to inspire those around them. And Elias, in his quiet way, embodied all of it. Days later, the first skirmish broke out beyond the outer sectors. Enemy forces tested the Dominion, attacking minor stations and supply lines. The Dominion soldiers, though skilled, were unprepared for the precision and efficiency of the human-led defenses. Under Elias' guidance, the Dominion forces adapted quickly. Supply routes were rerouted, attacks predicted, and enemy forces trapped or neutralized with minimal casualties. The Queen watched from her command center, astonished. "He turns every situation into an advantage," she whispered to herself, and Elias did it quietly, without pride or arrogance. His human methods, simple, practical, and adaptable, were transforming the way the Dominion approached warfare. Alien commanders, once skeptical, began to see that humans were not fragile or weak. They were a species that could survive and thrive under conditions that would destroy others. By the end of the week, the Queen summoned the council again. This time there was no doubt about Elia's abilities. The council members, though still cautious, began to respect his judgment and strategy. "Your Highness," one of the generals said, "we underestimated humans. We assumed they were weak and ordinary. But this human, he has changed everything. The human you see before you is not an exception. He represents a species that reveals power only when necessary, and the galaxy will soon learn that lesson." And in doing so, he had begun to shift the balance of power in ways no one had predicted. As night fell on the glowing city, the Queen realized that she had married not a simple human, but a force of quiet strength. The first cracks in the illusion had appeared, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And somewhere beyond the stars, the rival coalition began to reconsider their plans, unaware that the ordinary human they had mocked could be the key to their undoing. The warning came without drama. No alarm screamed. No panic spread through the palace. Instead, the lights in the command chamber shifted color, and every display showed the same message. Multiple FLEETs detected. NO unfriendly. Full scale. Queen Zyrevel stood still, her expression unreadable. She had ruled through wars, rebellions, and betrayals, but what she saw now was different. The rival coalition was no longer testing her defenses. They were committing everything. "This is invasion," one of the generals said quietly. "They are not holding back." His posture was relaxed, but his eyes moved fast, tracking formations, timing, and distance. The fleets were vast, thousands of ships moving with brutal confidence. "They believe we are weak," Elia said. "They believe fear will make us surrender. Fear does the opposite to humans." Zyrevel raised her hand and silence followed. "Enough," she said. "We will not surrender our future." Dominion shields flickered under the pressure. Alien commanders shouted orders, trying to hold the line. Then something changed. Enemy targeting systems began to fail. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Missiles missed by small margins. Energy beams struck empty space. Command signals delayed by fractions of seconds, but those fractions changed everything. "What is happening?" a general demanded. Elias leaned forward. "Human interference." Civilian satellites shifted roles. Mining drones adjusted their programming. None of them fired weapons. They learned. They watched enemy patterns, shared data, adapted in real time. Each second made the Dominion's defenses smarter and the enemy's attacks less effective. "This is not brute force," one alien officer whispered. "This is evolution." How long have humans been preparing like this? Dominion ships, once defensive and slow, now moved with perfect timing. Human logic had been woven into their systems. Routes adjusted automatically. Shields strengthened where attacks would land before the enemy even fired. "Predictive defense," Elias explained. "Humans do not wait to be hit." She had believed power was something visible: size, strength, weapons, but this was different. This was intelligence used with patience. Then came the second wave. Massive enemy warships entered the system, larger, heavier, designed to crush resistance through sheer force. The palace trembled as distant impacts echoed through space. "Now they are serious," a general said grimly. Elias nodded. "So are we." Across all channels a message broadcast, not loud, not threatening, clear, calm: "Human, withdraw. This space is protected. Continue and you will lose." The rival coalition hesitated. Then they attacked harder. The Queen felt anger rise. "They ignore your warning." Enemy ships lost power, not all, just enough. Engines shut down. Weapons overheated and locked. Navigation failed. No explosions, no screams, just silence. Entire enemy formations drifted helplessly, caught in a web of human logic and adaptive systems. Dominion forces moved in, securing ships without resistance. The alien commanders stared in disbelief. "This is impossible," one whispered. "No species disables an enemy fleet without firing." Its commander demanded the Queen's surrender, calling humanity a trick, a parasite hiding behind others. Zyrevel stood tall. "You misunderstand," she said. "Humanity does not hide. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because they understood. They had encountered a species that did not seek dominance yet could not be overpowered. After the invasion ended, silence settled over the palace. The court gathered again, but this time no one mocked the human. No one questioned his presence. They bowed, not out of fear, out of recognition. Queen Zyrevel addressed them. "Today, the Dominion survives because we stood beside humanity, not above it." "You could rule the galaxy," she said quietly. Elias shook his head. "Humans do not want that." The illusion was gone, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy did not react with cheers. It reacted with silence. News of the failed invasion spread faster than any fleet. Systems that once mocked the Dominion's alliance with humanity now paused their trade routes, delayed their negotiations, and watched very carefully. No official declarations were made. No accusations were spoken. Everyone felt it. Something had changed. Queen Zyrevel sat upon her throne, her posture straight, her expression calm. Around her stood the council, the generals, and the highest nobles of the Dominion. Across every screen floated the same reports: enemy fleets disabled without destruction, entire armadas forced to retreat without a single major battle. Fear existed in the room, but it was no longer directed at her. It was directed at the idea of humanity. Elias Ward stood beside the throne, dressed simply as always. He did not wear armor or symbols of rank. He did not carry a weapon, yet no one in the chamber doubted his presence. One of the elders broke the silence. "Your Majesty," the elder said slowly, "the rival coalition has requested negotiations. They no longer question your rule." The negotiations took place in a neutral star system. Delegates arrived with heavy guards and cautious expressions. Once they would have dismissed Elias as decoration. Now their eyes followed him with careful respect. The rival coalition spoke of peace, of mutual defense, of shared borders. Their words were measured, controlled. They no longer demanded. They requested. Elias listened without interruption. When they finished, he spoke calmly. "Peace is possible," he said, "but it must be built on understanding, not fear." Borders were secured. For the first time in generations, the galaxy moved away from constant conflict, not because of force, because of trust earned through restraint. Back on the capital world, celebrations were held across the city. Lights filled the sky. Music echoed through the streets. Citizens of many species gathered, speaking of survival, unity, and the strange human who had changed everything without asking for credit. Zyrevel stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the crowds. "You could stand before them," she said. "They would cheer you. Even now, they want symbols of unity." Elias bowed his head slightly. "That is enough. Power without hunger." And because of that, no one dared challenge them. Children across the Dominion learned a new lesson in history, not about wars, about restraint. Elias remained at the Queen's side, unchanged by time or praise. He refused statues, titles, or stories built around him. When asked why, his answer was always the same. "Humans are not the story," he said. "What we protect is. But we regret destruction far more." And at the center of those stories was a truth the galaxy would never forget.